Chapter 34, Once More Around the World. Cersei had spent the entire tourney fuming in silence. What should have been her chance to reconnect with Jaime was ruined at every turn, thanks to her incompetent servants. She had even dismissed 2 of them for their failures. One had the audacity to claim she delivered a letter to Jaime personally. Lies, all lies. If that were true, Jaime would have come to her by now. If it weren't for the many visitors in the Red Keep, she would have had the girl whipped. Instead, she simply had her thrown out onto the street. But it was on the night of the feast that Cersei began to wonder if her servants might not be completely lying to her. Maybe, just maybe, there was some truth in their words. She had smiled at Jaime countless times, and every glance from him made her heart race, sending tingles deep in her stomach. At one point during the night, the ache between her legs became so distracting that she almost had to leave the hall. When the first note was brought back to her, she smiled. She loved it when her brother played hard to get. But the second note only fueled her fury. She watched as the girl approached Jaime, trying to hand him the note. When he refused it, Cersei couldn't believe her eyes. Rage coursed through her. If it hadn't been for the crowd in the hall, these useless, worthless people, she would have marched over and given Jaime a piece of her mind. To reject her so publicly was not how this night was supposed to end. It was not part of her plan. "Are you all right, my queen?" Lord Mace asked, his voice cutting through her thoughts. "What?" "Oh, yes, I'm fine," she replied abruptly. The foolish oaf looked suitably chastened and returned to his meal, which suited her just fine. The last thing she wanted was to be stuck in conversation with the stupidest man in all of the 7 kingdoms. Yet as she glanced at her brother, she couldn't help but think that Mace Tyrell might have some competition for that title. Cersei watched as Jaime laughed and joked with Tyrion and the rest of their family. It was bad enough that he was ignoring her, but to spend time with the monster who had killed their mother was something she couldn't bear to witness. Thankfully, something else caught her attention. She looked down to see the floppy fish sprawled on the ground, trying and failing to get back on his feet as the bastard and the rose walked away from him. Had the bastard done something? Had he struck the Lord of Riverrun? Please let it be true. She would ensure he was punished for his impudence. Even Robert wouldn't be able to deny it. Perhaps if Jaime saw his precious squire in some trouble, he'd come to her for help. Yes, this was something she could work with. As she watched more intently, she was stunned by what happened next. To hear such words from a bastard? No, this wouldn't do at all. She would need to get involved. Even if it didn't bring Jaime to her, the bastard needed to learn his place. The next day, everything had gone horribly wrong. What a useless fool Edmure Tully truly was. Everything had been set up so well. If Jaime had come to her and pleaded, she would have allowed the bastard to keep his hand. But no, the stupid trout had instead lost his head. Cersei respected warriors, they excited her. Watching Jaime spar or joust always left her feeling aroused, and she experienced similar feelings with others, though less intensely. Edmure Tully was no warrior, and while she hated the bastard for ruining her plans, he certainly was one. She briefly wondered what he would look like when he was older, when his muscles filled out and he grew tall. With his dark hair and gray eyes, he would be a very beautiful man one day, a bastard still, but a beautiful one. For now, though, he was just an annoying boy who continually got in her way. Every plan she devised seemed to get foiled when it came to Jon Snow, and she was sick and tired of it. Cersei was tired of it all. Now her hopes rested on a man who couldn't tell one end of a horse from the other. Gods, why were men so foolish? She took a long swallow of her wine and stood gazing out at the city, her city. This was where she was meant to be, who she was destined to be, a queen. Yet, it seemed she had no real power, not even enough to put a bastard in his place. Her grip tightened around the wine glass, frustration evident as she emptied it. Holding it out, she felt it being refilled and took a deep breath. Jon Snow was just a boy. Maybe even that floppy fish could deal with him, she thought hopefully. Perhaps he would unhorse him and leave him as crippled as the Tyrell heir. The image made her chuckle softly. "My queen, would you like some more?" "We seem to have run out," the silly girl said. "Of course I want more, you useless creature," Cersei replied, her contempt clear. What did this girl think? That she would stop after just one bottle? A week later, she stormed toward the Hand's office. How dare they do this to her? She was the queen. Who did they think they were, cutting off her funds and denying her the basics? She needed that new lace dress and the rug, too. What was the point of being a queen if she had to settle for less than what she had as the daughter of the Rock? And that fool Baelish, he had the nerve to tell her that funds were tight and that they needed to make adjustments. The fat oaf she married didn't seem to be making any adjustments, his whoring and feasting continued as usual. No, she would not accept this. She was a lioness, and it was time for them to hear her roar. She stormed into the solar, practically growling at the guard who tried to slow her down. Luckily for him, he quickly realized that would be folly. Inside, she found them laughing. They actually had the nerve to laugh. At the sight of her, they immediately jumped to their feet. When they saw her, she smiled, though it felt forced. "My queen," Jon Arryn said. "What is the meaning of this? How dare you tell me my funds have been cut?" "I am your queen," she said venomously. "Indeed you are, my queen," Baelish replied, his smug tone grating on her nerves. "But the crown's funding is suffering a shortfall. Then cut something that matters less than your queen's comfort, you foolish man." "I'm afraid we already have, my queen. As of now, we're cutting all non-essentials," Jon Arryn said, meeting her gaze. "I am your queen." "I am essential," she screamed, gripping his desk with white knuckles. "Of course you are, my queen, but with our lack of funding, we have no choice. Ever since your brother cut off his support, we've had to make deals elsewhere," Jon Arryn explained. "What do you mean my brother cut off his support?" "Jaime wouldn't do that to me," she replied, uncertainty creeping into her voice. "I'm afraid he has, my queen. He cut off his support when he took over as Lord of Casterly Rock." Cersei looked at him in disbelief. "I shall talk to my brother. For now, I'll use my personal account." "I'm afraid that won't be possible either, my queen. Your personal account is empty. It hasn't received a deposit since your brother was named Lord." She stared at him in shock, momentarily speechless. There was no way Jaime would do this to her. He was her brother, her other half, he loved her. Her personal account was something their father had ensured she always had. No lion would ever need to scrimp and save, he had told her. While it was there for certain uses, she had always drawn from it freely, knowing her father would replenish it. But now it was empty. This couldn't be right. She needed to speak to Jaime, but he had gone north for some ridiculous reason, or so the imp had told them before he left. Jaime had gone north with that bastard, Jon Snow. Ever since Jon had come into Jaime's life, her brother had changed. Her efforts to be with him had come to nothing, and that bastard boy was at the center of it all. Even her uncle had dared to threaten her, all because of that bastard. Her plans to put him in his place had also failed. Of course, that was the fish's fault and not hers. Her strategies would have worked if not for a foolish man. But this was different. She needed help. She needed coin. "How can we rectify this, my lord?" she asked softly. "We need a new source of coin, my lady, one that can help us bridge the divide," Baelish replied with a smarmy smile. "Who?" she inquired, already dreading the answer. "The Tyrells, my queen. We need to convince the king of the match between Lady Margaery and Prince Joffrey." She nodded, but internally she shuddered. She couldn't allow the Tyrells to wrap their vines around her precious baby boy. They would suffocate him, try to control him, and prevent him from becoming the great king he was destined to be. More importantly, she couldn't let Margaery become queen, take her place, and wear her crown, the crown she deserved, the crown she was born to wear. Younger and more beautiful, the voice in her head taunted, stirring a feeling deep inside her, fear, a feeling she loathed more than any other. Richard was happy to see Castle Derry looming in the distance. His network had grown significantly since Varys's demise. Some of the little bird's handlers had joined him, and after some tests, he was confident they were now loyal to him. However, as he expanded his reach, his time had become limited, preventing him from speaking to allies on his king's behalf, which meant he had missed his chance to speak with Raymond in the capital. As he drew closer to the castle, he smiled broadly. He had last come here for Rhaegar, and now he was coming on behalf of his son. The king was everything he should be: smart, courteous, caring, yet fierce and extremely protective of those he considered friends or allies. Richard had discovered the king's unwavering stance when he dared to mention Jaime Lannister. Despite all that Jaime had done for the crown and Barristan's endorsement, Richard viewed him as a threat, an irredeemable traitor. The king, however, had made it abundantly clear that Jaime was off limits. Those who spoke ill of him had no place at his side. "But your grace, he killed your grandfather," Richard argued. "Aye, and he also killed my other grandfather and uncle. Did you forget, sire?" "No, your grace," Richard replied. "My grandfather was an evil man," the king continued. "The realm is far better off without him. What Lord Jaime did was an honorable act, even if others may see it differently. But he swore an oath to his king, your grace. What if he does it again? Do you think I'm like my grandfather, Richard?" The king asked, his disbelief evident. "No, of course not, your grace. You are your father's son, just as he was more his grandfather's than his own father's. I have no doubt about that." The king nodded in acknowledgement. "Sire, I swear to you on my honor that what Lord Jaime did was for the greater good. Will you accept my word on this?" I will, your grace." "Then from this moment forward, I want to hear no more of it. Lord Jaime is a good man, a loyal man. Without him, I would not be here, and I consider him my most loyal and truest supporter," the king stated firmly. Richard nodded, though he sensed there was much more to Jaime Lannister than he realized. Even his network had turned up little more than whispers of Jaime's devotion to the king. There was no evidence of disloyalty, yet Richard resolved to remain vigilant. As he approached the castle gates, the guards halted his entry. He handed them a note, aware that the skull and red lips would reveal his identity. To most, he was still a dead man. After a brief wait, he was escorted into the keep, down some stairs, and into a small solar. When Raymond saw him enter, his shock was palpable. "I thought you were dead," Richard said, his voice filled with disbelief. "Aye, but I got better," Raymond replied, laughter bubbling up from deep within him. He pulled Richard into a warm embrace. "It's good to see you, old friend. You too. I'm sorry to see how you've been treated." "So be it, Richard. It is what it is." Richard's tone softened. "Ever feel like you made the wrong choice?" "Supporting Rhaegar was the only choice. If I had the chance to do it again, I'd gladly do it. He was the king we needed, Richard." "Aye, he was. That's what brings me to you. We need to talk about a restoration, Raymond. The boy always showed signs of his father, Richard. Besides, no one's even heard of them in years. I'm not talking about Viserys, Raymond. I'm speaking of Rhaegar's son, Jaehaerys." Richard watched as Raymond's expression changed, hope flickering in his eyes. He nodded, and Richard could see tears welling up, a smile breaking across Raymond's face. "Lady Lyanna had a babe, a boy?" Raymond asked, his voice trembling with hope. "Queen Lyanna, Raymond." "Queen," he echoed softly. "Where is he? Is he with the king's guard?" Did Arthur and the others spirit him away? He's far closer than that, Raymond. You've actually met the boy, or at least seen him. I have. Where? I don't. I'd have remembered if I met him. I'd know it. Jon Snow, Raymond. Jaehaerys Targaryen is Jon Snow. Raymond burst into laughter, a joyous sound that filled the room. His eyes sparkled as he moved behind Richard, pulling out a bottle of Arbor Gold, an expensive one. He took 2 glasses, poured the wine, and handed one to Richard. I've had this bottle for almost 10 years. It was a gift from Rhaegar for Jonathan's name day. I expected to drink it on my last day, for I had nothing worthy to celebrate with it. When I saw your note, I figured I'd drink it with an old friend. To the boy who put a fish in his place, to Jaehaerys Targaryen, the third of his name, to the king. Richard raised his glass, a smile spreading across his face. Raymond echoed, to the king, as tears streamed down his cheeks. Finally, they were home. Tyrion felt a wave of relief wash over him. The capital had been fascinating, but there was no place like the Rock. Sitting down at his desk, he faced a mountain of papers awaiting his attention. He smiled, he truly loved this. Before leaving the Rock, he had instructed his steward to forward any urgent reports to him in the capital. Yet, he received none. As he sifted through the papers, a couple caught his eye. While they didn't require his immediate action, he noted a troubling report about bandits in the Westerlands. This was not something his father would tolerate, nor would his brother. Tyrion knew he would need to organize patrols to handle the situation. Given the volume of gold and trade that flowed through the West, it was crucial to keep the roads safe. A glance at the report suggested a sizable group of men involved. Perhaps he could send Adam to deal with it. Another troubling report came from the Pinnacle ships, hinting that they might be followed. The thought of someone tracking their movements was concerning. Fortunately, the ships had a decent crew on board, providing some level of protection, but maybe they needed additional security. Would arming the ships be seen as hostile? He knew that if they equipped the vessels for battle, it would certainly raise suspicions. They were meant for trade only, and arming them would suggest they were preparing for war, something they were doing, but primarily with the smaller ships. The Pinnacles were far too valuable to be used in that way unless absolutely necessary, a thought he didn't want to dwell on. Reaching over to his desk, he pulled out the drawings Jon had made, the designs they used to build the ships. The boy was an exceptional artist, and Tyrion admired the skill with which he had copied them. Tyrion examined the original documents in his hands. "My lord, will you need anything else tonight?" Dara asked, looking up at him. "No, that will be all." "Go get some rest, young man," Tyrion replied with a smirk. "I shall, thank you, my lord." Though not technically a page or squire, Dara served as Tyrion's hand servant. He was a smart young man from a small house in the Westerlands, and Tyrion liked him, which was what mattered most. Eventually, he would need a proper squire or page, and he would let Dara choose if that was what he wanted. For now, he was content with their arrangement. Tyrion stretched, downed the last of his wine, and gathered the papers along with Jon's drawings as he headed to bed. He pondered the possibility of making some adjustments, perhaps arming the Pinnacles in a discreet yet accessible way. The ships were large enough for it, he would think more on this. A few days later, Tyrion stood before 2 new ships that were nearly ready for launch. After reviewing the drawings and inspecting the vessels, he had devised a plan. Small sections of the ships could be dropped to create openings, allowing them to fire scorpions and crossbows at any attackers, as if they were windows. Both sides of the ships were designed for this purpose, and they had found the perfect placement for the weapons. Large scorpions would be mounted at the bow and stern, providing protection at both ends. At some point, he would figure out how to incorporate a wind wheel for propulsion, but for now, they would operate as usual. "Tyrion, we'll have the arms loaded for when we're ready to set off," Kevin said as he approached. "What about the other ships, Uncle?" Tyrion inquired. As they dock, we'll hold them for a few days. It shouldn't take too long. We've already fitted the Lady Joanna and the Lion's Mane, Kevin replied. What do you think of them, Uncle? In your opinion, how safe are they? Kevin let out a loud laugh, startling Tyrion. Safe? Tyrion, only a fool or a madman would try to take one of these ships now. Even if someone were crazy enough to attempt it, they'd need a fleet to stop ours. In terms of arms and speed, these ships are practically unstoppable, he said proudly. What about Lannisport itself, Uncle? Tyrion asked, and Kevin looked taken aback. Not that I'm questioning you, just put my mind at ease, please. Very well. No one will ever take Lannisport by surprise, or in any other way, again, Tyrion. I have 4,000 knights at my command, 7,000 troops, and over 2,000 bowmen and crossbowmen. This is my home, and no one will take it, Kevin replied with determination. I know that, Uncle. You've done a remarkable job. It's incredible what you've accomplished in such a short time, Tyrion said, noticing both his uncle and Lancel swell with pride. It's all I ever wanted, you know. A seat of my own, something to pass on, Kevin said, and Tyrion smiled at him. Later that day, Tyrion met with Ser Adam. He had decided to give the man some time with his family before sending him off to deal with the bandit problem. You wished to speak to me, my lord? Adam asked as he entered the room. I did. Would you like some wine, Adam? Tyrion held up a glass. Sure, why not? Adam replied. Tyrion poured them both a glass and handed one to him. I read a report about some bandits, Adam. It concerns me. They seem larger in numbers and more organized than they should be. I read it too, my lord. I sent out some patrols, but wherever these men are, they're not attacking when we're looking for them. I noticed that. There's something here, though, Adam. I want you to take a large group and make it look like you're heading to Craighall. Ride past Clegane's keep before doubling back and riding hard for Castamere, Tyrion said. You think Clegane's involved? I don't know, Adam. I just don't know. But he didn't show up for the tourney, which is odd, and while we were gone, there were sudden bandit attacks. Doesn't that seem strange? It does now that you mention it. I'll take a large group. If it's Clegane, we'll stop him. No, don't attack him, Adam. Just make your presence known. I've organized a little surprise in case they do what I expect, but let's see if they fall into the trap first. You really are a crafty sod, aren't you? Adam laughed. I have to be, Adam. I have to be. Jenna had decided that not only did she hate that cat, but it might very well be evil, or at least mad. With Joy, the black cat was as meek as a newborn kitten. But if anyone else came too close, it would suddenly turn into a vicious creature. More than once, a servant had approached her with scratches on their hands or arms from getting too close to the cat. Geryon and Tyrion laughed it off, which only annoyed her more, especially since her brother had left to return to Castamere, leaving her to deal with his daughter's new best friend. The girl and the cat were inseparable. Despite her own feelings about the wretched animal, Jenna found herself giggling at the conversations she overheard between them. Joy could talk for hours, telling the cat about her day, about apples, about Ghost and John. Those conversations often ended with her holding the cat tightly to her chest. Now, as she walked to the girl's room, she could hear a much happier exchange. Joy babbled on while the cat purred. Are you hungry, Balon? Do you want more? No, why's that? Are you sick? You don't look sick. I got sick once and made a mess. Did you make a mess, Balon? No, no mess. Want some drink, is that it? I'll get some. Wait here. She heard the pitter-patter of Joy's footsteps as she moved about. Joy peeked out the door, calling for Alessia while Jenna stifled her giggles from an alcove. "Essa, Essa!" Joy shouted. "What is it, Joy?" Alessia replied, her voice light with laughter. "Balon thirsty, Essa." "All right, I'll get him something to drink." "Will that be all?" Alessia asked, still chuckling. Straw belly. Balon wants a straw belly." "Are you sure it's for Balon?" "Of course. I don't like straw belly." "Just a little, Balon loves straw belly." Jenna couldn't help but think, "You little liar." She tried to suppress her laughter, recalling all the times she had to wipe Joy's face free of red stains from the strawberries she'd eaten. At least this time, Joy didn't ask for pie. As messy as Joy could be with fruit, giving her a pie would guarantee that both she and the cat would need a bath afterward. Jenna listened as Alessia returned, walking into the room before heading back down the corridor. "Balon straw bellies!" Joy exclaimed, her laughter echoing around the room. "No, Balon, share." "All right, one for you," Alessia said. Straw bellies, yummy." Joy giggled. "No, Balon." Joy's laughter rang out again. "Balon make mess." Unable to resist, Jenna stepped into the room to see for herself. To say the cat had made a mess was an understatement. The floor was soaked where water had been spilled, and strawberries were crushed underfoot where Joy had stepped on them. The cat, aside from its face being covered in red, wore a smirk that was both amusing and alarming. Joy, on the other hand, was a sight. Her dress was ruined, her hair a bizarre mix of bright blonde on top and a vibrant red where she had wiped the strawberries. Her face was smeared with berry seeds, squished fruit, and juice, and she looked at Jenna with an apologetic expression, fully aware she was in trouble. "What happened, Joy?" Jenna asked, trying to keep her tone serious. "Balon made mess, auntie," I said. "No, but Balon doesn't care," Joy said, waving her hands in resignation, which made Jenna burst out laughing, leaving Joy a bit confused. "Come on, let's have a bath." "Balon too, auntie?" Joy raised an eyebrow, which only made Jenna laugh harder. "Yes, Balon too." Olenna was feeling particularly irritated with Jaime Lannister at that moment. Well, maybe hate was too strong a word, but she was certainly annoyed, and that would have to suffice. They would be leaving this dreadful place in the morning, and she couldn't wait. If she had to endure one more minute with that insufferable family or their hangers-on, she might just lose her mind. For once, Mace had actually come through. He had laid the groundwork, and the meeting she had just attended was the result of his efforts. Yet, the sheer arrogance of them, thinking they could string her along with the promise of a betrothal to a second son, was infuriating. It was no surprise the Lannisters had withdrawn their support. They had attempted this tactic before with the Crown Prince, and while that might delay things a bit, they certainly wouldn't do so for a second son. Her Marjorie was worth far more than that, more than even the Crown Prince, and that was without considering the wealth they were pouring into this endeavor. "You need to understand, Lady Olenna, that Prince Tommen's age prohibits us from making such an arrangement public." "Does it indeed?" she replied, biting her tongue. "It does, though I have no doubt that with your continued support, we can work this out to our mutual benefit." "Oh, I have no doubt you could, Lord Hand." The sooner Jaime Lannister returned from the north, the better. They needed to sever their ties with the crown. He had been right, this regime was rotten, and it was time for a change. It frustrated her that she would need to wait at all, though it did provide her with more time to investigate exactly who Jaime Lannister was backing for the throne. She searched her memory, trying to picture Viserys as a boy. She had only met him briefly. Olenna had never enjoyed her time at Aerys' court. She hoped the boy would take after his brother rather than his father, although the Lannister support he seemed to command suggested otherwise. Jaime had made it clear he would never back another Aerys. The thought of the boy resembling Rhaegar brought a smile to Olenna's face. Her granddaughter Marjorie married to a dragon prince. That was a tale worthy of songs. It would take time to learn about the boy's true nature and what support they could gather, but with the Lannisters on their side, they were already on the right path. "Grandmama, are we still leaving tomorrow?" Marjorie asked as she entered the room. "Yes, sweetling. Why do you ask?" "I wanted to let the children know I'm leaving so they won't think I've abandoned them." "I don't think they'd ever believe that, sweetling. You've spent so much time with them this past week." "I know, but they've gotten used to seeing me. If I just disappear, it would be terrible for them." Olenna couldn't help but smile. Ever since Jon Snow had left, her granddaughter had dedicated herself to ensuring the smooth distribution of food. Marjorie had set up a place where the hungry could come for a simple meal of soup and bread, which, though modest, was far better than the usual bowl of brown slop. Allery had hired several people to work at the soup kitchen, all eager to earn a decent wage for once. While it had been Jon Snow's idea to use funds to feed the poor, Marjorie and Allery had expanded on it. Orphanages would receive weekly food deliveries, as would Flea Bottom. The soup kitchen was open to anyone in need, and they had even more plans to improve the lives of these unfortunate souls. Clothing, bed linens, toys for the children, all were in the works. Allery had even reassigned one of their stewards to oversee the efforts. The Dragon Prince could. Edmure knew he couldn't do any better than his granddaughter as queen. So yes, they would support Viserys if he proved worthy, but it would come at a cost, a bride for their armies and gold, which felt cheap at half the price. As he walked through the corridors of Riverrun, Edmure felt a wave of nerves wash over him. His father had surely heard about the incident at King's Landing by now, and he was certain to be displeased. He had embarrassed his family, made a fool of himself in front of his lords, and worst of all, it had been the bastard's doing. His father also deserved some blame. If he had acted on Cat's suggestions, none of this would have happened. Instead, he had stood idle, allowing the bastard to use his tricks to bring even more shame upon their family. Edmure couldn't understand how the bastard had outmaneuvered him. There was no way a child born of deceit and lust could have bested the trueborn heir of Riverrun otherwise. What stung even more was that he had the bastard right in front of him for the taking. If the man hadn't slipped at the last moment, Edmure's lance would have surely unhorsed him. As he approached his father's solar, he shuddered when he saw Lord Jason leaving with Petyr. Both men had been called in to see his father before him. He nodded at them, hoping they had spoken the truth, had told his father how the bastard goaded him, how he had pushed him over and left him with no choice. What the bastard said had forced his hand. But was that really the truth? When he woke the next morning, his head throbbed and he felt nauseous, but he couldn't even remember the bastard from the night before. It was only when the girl arrived from the Queen that the memories returned. "Lord Edmure, the Queen sent me to give you this," the girl said, handing him a note. He opened it and read. "The bastard needs to pay for what he did to you last night. For the things he said to you, no bastard can be allowed to. Should you bring him up on charges, you'll find no better friend than I," the Queen's messenger said. "This is from the Queen?" Edmure asked, holding the note. "Yes, my lord. I need to take it back to her. You understand?" "What?" "Oh, yes, of course," he replied, handing the girl back the note. He had spoken to his men, and when he heard what had been said, he was furious. He brushed aside Derry's comments about him being drunk. That man should have been dealt with years ago, in his opinion. He felt annoyed when Jason refused to stand by him and speak up, and even Petyr had turned him down. But with the Queen on his side, he did what he was asked, only for it all to fail spectacularly. As he entered his father's solar, he sighed. This was not going to be pleasant. His father stood at the window, gazing out at the red fork, clearly agitated, with his hands clenched into fists. Edmure wisely chose not to take a seat. His father's displeasure would only grow if he did, so he stood and waited. It felt like an eternity before his father finally spoke, and even longer before he turned to look at him. Each second dragged on, heavy with silence. Have you any idea of what you've done, boy? Hoster asked. Father, Edmure began to stammer. Don't even start, Edmure. You have embarrassed this house, not once, not twice, but 3 separate times, all at a damn tourney, of all places. How hard is it to go to a tourney and represent your house? Hoster's voice rose, thick with anger. Father, it was not my fault. The bastard. To 7 hells with the bastard. This was all you, Edmure. How am I supposed to fix this? Hoster sighed deeply. We can still take care of the bastard. We could arrange an accident, Edmure suggested. By the 7, just how stupid are you? What did I do to deserve this? I thank the gods that your mother didn't live to see just how much of a disappointment you've all become. Hoster exclaimed, his frustration palpable. Father, it wasn't my fault. The Queen asked me to bring the charges, Edmure said, his voice rising in frustration as he searched for anything to calm his father's fury. What did you say? Hoster demanded, curiosity piqued. The Queen sent me a note, Father, instructing me to lay the charges. Where is this note? Hoster asked, his brow furrowing. Her servant took it back with her, Edmure replied. Hoster slammed his hands on the table, his face turning a deep shade of red. He coughed and spluttered for a moment before filling a glass with water and adding something from a small bottle, swallowing it down in one swift motion. He locked eyes with Edmure, and Edmure felt himself shrink back against the chair, sweat pooling in his palms. He hoped desperately for his father to look away so he could wipe them dry. Now listen carefully, boy, Hoster said, his voice low and intense. You embarrassed yourself up there, which I care not about, but you embarrassed this family. You embarrassed me, and that I will not tolerate. I told you the bastard was no concern of ours, that Cat was being unreasonable, that we would take no part in her delusions. And what did you do? You ignored me. You thought you knew better. Now we're a laughing stock. It was bad enough you got drunk, and then you tried to confront the bastard's hand, queen or no queen, what were you thinking? Do you really believe Ned Stark would have nothing to say about you being involved in his illegitimate child being harmed? Damn it, boy, look at me when I'm speaking to you. Edmure raised his head, meeting his father's gaze. As he was chastised, he instinctively lowered his eyes and prayed for it to stop, but, as always, his prayers went unanswered. And even after all that, you lost a joust to a 10-name-day-old boy. My own son unable to unhorse a child. That alone would have been enough embarrassment, but then I hear you refuse to apologize, in front of the king. You refuse to apologize. Hoster's voice boomed, punctuated by another fit of coughing. I can't believe you want me to apologize to a bastard, father. Edmure exclaimed, frustration boiling over. Shame yourself. What do you think you've done, boy? Stand up for the honor you've already lost. Let me make this clear, there is nothing between us and Jon Snow, not a damn thing. Those thoughts of vengeance you have, they stop right here and now. What do you think would happen if Jon Snow got harmed? Hoster's voice was stern, his gaze unwavering. I don't care, father. What he said about us, about our honor, what he's done to Cat, and what he's trying to do to your grandson, my own nephew. The bastard needs to pay. Edmure shot back, his voice rising. Hoster shook his head, disappointment etched on his face. I don't know which of you is worse. I thought Lisa was the delusional one, but it seems both you and Cat are just as bad. The bastard doesn't care about the North. Given what he's done, he could take it if he wished, but he doesn't care. Do you think I'm happy with what he said in King's Landing? Are you really that foolish? No, father, I know you're upset, but I don't understand why you won't do anything. You may not see the threat, but Cat does. By the father, give me strength. If anything happens to that boy, the Lannisters would be at our door in a heartbeat. They'd tear us down brick by brick after all he's done for them. Jaime Lannister treats that boy like his own son, and you bring that disaster upon us for some words and ridiculous fears? He embarrassed me, father. He embarrassed us. Edmure's voice trembled with emotion. You embarrassed us, Edmure. You did. Now, I shall hear no more about it. Edmure stood up, ready to leave, but then turned back, anger flaring within him. You won't be lord forever, father. Aye, that's true. But Edmure, should Jon Snow come to harm, should I hear that the Lannisters are coming for us, I swear it here and now, I'll name a new heir. One of Cat's children will take Riverrun before you ever do. Edmure glared at his father, his anger morphing into a deep-seated hatred. How dare he? How dare Hoster threaten him like this when he was the only one in the room truly standing up for their family? The tension had been building for years. More ravens had flown to and from Winterfell since Jon Snow left than had arrived during all Edmure's time there. Each bird brought tales of the boy's adventures in distant lands. Many of those messages came from House Manderly, filled with stories of ships being built, trade deals struck, and tournaments won. But it was Jon Snow's own letters that stirred trouble between Lord Stark and Lady Catelyn, leading to increasingly heated arguments. Things reached a breaking point when Lady Catelyn approached Edmure, instructing him not to bring any messages from Jon Snow to her husband or children. He knew he had to inform Lord Stark, which put him in Lady Catelyn's disfavor. Yet, he served the house, and Lord Stark was its head. It was his duty to deliver the messages. Besides, he couldn't deny how those letters brightened young Sansa's spirits. Surely, there could be nothing wrong with them if they brought her such joy. Eventually, the tension eased. The letters and gifts from Jon Snow became less of a problem, but it was the news about him that sparked the most discord. Although he never read the letters before handing them to Lord Stark, he had to copy them for posterity after they were read. He found himself looking forward to that task. Jon's accomplishments shone through each letter, revealing his cleverness and resourcefulness. Even after all these years, Luwin thought fondly of the boy, still considering him one of his charges. Reading about him always filled Luwin with a sense of pride. The creation of wind wheels, the reopening of mines, and the ships he had designed, which the Manderlys were now using, all of it brought him joy for the lad. However, when he heard the cawing at the window, he grimaced. Dark wings, dark words indeed. The last few ravens had proven just that, though Luwin couldn't understand why. Well, except for the one from Riverrun, that one he understood clearly. Yet, it was hard for him to believe that everything written in it could be the complete truth. There was no way the boy could have changed that much. As he took the scroll from the raven, he noticed the seal. It had come from Castle Black. Wrapping himself warmly, he headed outside and made his way to the main hall, where the lord and his children were breaking their fast. Morning, Luwin, Jory greeted him as he passed. Aye, it's a fair one today, is it not? Luwin replied. It's not too bad, though I'll be glad when my shift is over. I really hate the nights, Jory said with a laugh, which Luwin returned. He passed Ser Roderick, who was setting things up for the morning spars, and tried not to look as he saw old Nan creep from the crypts like a morning specter. Eventually, he made his way into the great hall. At the top table, young Arya and Bran were trying to be subtle as they flicked food at each other, but given the Lord's smile, it was clear he had seen it all. Sansa, as usual, was delicately eating her food, reminding Luwin of her mother. Beside her, Lord Robb was engaged in conversation with Theon, both smirking at something the other had said. Luwin shook his head. The Ironborn was not one of his favorite people, and thanks to him, the young lord was neglecting his lessons. At the center of the table, Lord Stark sat eating heartily, with his wife quietly beside him. Luwin approached them and handed the lord the raven scroll. My lord, this just came from Castle Black, he said. Thank you, Maester, Lord Stark replied, and Luwin watched as he read the scroll and sighed. before he handed it back to her. "My love, what is it?" Lady Catelyn asked. "Oh, it's nothing. It's just that Jon and Lord Jaime have left the wall and should be here within the moon," Luwin replied. He noticed the frown that appeared on Lady Catelyn's face, but before she could respond, Sansa spoke up happily. "Really, father? Jon will be here within the moon, for true." "Aye, that he will. He, Lord Jaime, and Lord Loras, along with their company," Lord Stark said, smiling fondly at Sansa. "Who's Jon?" Arya asked, and Luwin observed Lord Stark's expression tighten. "Our brother," Sansa replied, a hint of annoyance in her voice. "Your half-brother," Lady Stark corrected, shaking her head. "Our brother," Sansa insisted, her determination growing. Luwin caught the soft smile that returned to Lord Stark's face. As Luwin left the room, he turned to give a disapproving look to Theon and Robb, who were laughing when Theon whispered "bastard" under his breath. He could already sense that tonight would be another tense evening in the Great Hall, with the Lord and Lady likely exchanging words, just as they had when the scroll arrived from Highgarden. Lady Catelyn had gone from overjoyed at the news of the Tyrell boys' arrival to annoyed that Jon and Lord Jaime would be coming as well. Despite the brewing tensions, Luwin smiled to himself. He was looking forward to seeing Jon again. Perhaps he could pick his brain about the wind wheels. He had some ideas he wanted to try out. If there was one thing the North had in abundance, it was wind, and he chuckled at the thought. Yes, regardless of the complications Jon's visit might bring, he could honestly say he looked forward to the next moon and the return of Jon Snow. In Dorne, Doran sat in the garden, overlooking the children as they played in the nearby pool, Arryn standing guard behind him, as always. He read through some of the latest missives and pondered the changes occurring around him. All of Dorne had rejoiced at the news of Tywin's death, though the fact that it had come by a reaver's sword rather than a Dornish spear was not lost on him. Oberyn was irked. But the fact that the lion was dead sparked massive celebrations throughout Dorne. For Doran, however, these celebrations meant even more planning and careful analysis. With Tywin gone, how would the West change? Would it weaken the throne? The news from the West was strange and confusing. Tales emerged of the Kingslayer seemingly cutting off his support for the crown, choosing instead to invest in his own lands, with spectacular results. Then came another piece of odd news: Ned Stark's bastard was now squire to a Lannister. This revelation shocked even Oberyn, leaving Doran perplexed. Why would the Honorable Ned Stark allow his bastard to serve the Kingslayer? What was he missing? Doran needed answers and tried to place spies in the West, thinking it would be easy now that the old lion was dead. It turned out to be much more difficult than he anticipated. "My prince, a man has come to speak with you," one of his guards announced, interrupting Doran's thoughts. "From where?" Doran asked. "I do not know, my prince. Only that he is from Westeros." "Has he been checked?" Arryn inquired. "Thoroughly, though he refuses to let anyone inspect the package he carries. He says it's for the prince's eyes only." "Bring him to me," Doran commanded, and the guard hurried off to comply. "My prince, this package may not be safe," Arryn warned, concern evident in his voice. "I know. We can keep the man well watched. Your axe at his neck should dissuade any problems." "As you say, my prince." A few minutes later, the man entered. There was nothing particularly remarkable about him, except for the box he held, which he quickly placed on the ground in front of them. His guards moved to stand behind him, and Arryn raised his axe to the man's neck. "My prince, I bring a gift," the man said, his voice shaky with fear. "I see that." "From whom?" "I don't know, my prince. I was contacted by a man I know. He told me he was contacted by another man, and I have no doubt he wasn't the first," the man said. Doran nodded in agreement. "Where were you contacted?" "King's Landing, my prince. I'm the first mate on a ship that delivers to Dorne." I was also given this letter. One of the guards took the letter and handed it to Doran. He examined it before opening it. Although the letter was unsealed, it was clearly unread, which surprised him. Men were curious creatures by nature, so the fact that this note hadn't been read spoke volumes about the fear the men who carried it had of whoever had given it to them. "You didn't read this?" Doran asked. "No, my prince. I was instructed not to." "Instructed?" Doran raised an eyebrow. "It was made clear to me that it wouldn't go well for me if I didn't follow those instructions, my prince." Doran smiled before opening the note. Upon reading it, he gasped aloud, prompting Arryn to look at him with concern. Doran nodded, assuring him he was all right, and folded the note. "I thank you for your service. Dorne extends you its hospitality." He reached into his pocket and took out 2 gold dragons, handing them to the man, who shook his head. "My prince, I've been well paid for this. Consider this a bonus, my friend." After the man left, Doran had one of the guards open the box. Once nothing happened, he instructed him to reach inside, watching as the man removed a severed head. "Find me my brother immediately," Doran said to one of the guards. Oberyn. If there was one thing that could surely raise Oberyn's ire, aside from mentioning the damn stags or lions, it was being interrupted in a pleasure house. He and Illyrio were in the process of making their choices when a guard came in. The blonde twins were new, a boy and a girl from Lys, and both Oberyn and Illyrio were practically licking their lips at the thought of breaking them in, but instead, he was called to see his brother. Oberyn was not pleased with his brother's decision. As he strolled through the water gardens, he couldn't help but think that even their beauty paled in comparison to the boy he had left behind in Sunspear. He nearly laughed at Illyrio's pout when he suggested she join him on this journey. That was one battle he knew he couldn't win. Still, witnessing her caress the boy's sister had made the ride here quite uncomfortable. He hoped she wouldn't be satisfied before he returned. As he approached his brother's solar, he noticed the usual 2 guards standing watch. Inside, he knew Arryn was waiting with his axe. Oberyn felt a twinge of pity for anyone foolish enough to think they could get past the guards and find an easy target behind that door. The large Norvosi was one of the few men Oberyn truly feared. His loyalty to Doran was unwavering, and his axe was always ready to take the head of anyone who dared insult his prince. Entering the room, Oberyn was met with a surprising sight. Doran was sipping wine and smiling, a rare expression for him. "Well, brother, I trust one didn't interrupt anything too important," Doran said with a smirk. "A new experience, brother, that is all," Oberyn replied as he poured himself a drink. Doran handed him a letter and gestured for him to read it. "To the Princess Martell, I bid you my very best wishes. In the box, you'll find evidence of my sincerity. I was fortunate to call Princess Elia a friend. What happened to her and her children was an affront to the gods and to decency. The man whose head lies in this box was one of those responsible. Should you ever wish to bring the same justice to the others, then I am at your service. To Prince Oberyn, I make this offer: should you wish to climb a mountain, I look forward to our meeting. Perhaps it is time, my prince, for a trip to the west. Lannisport is lovely this time of year, I have been told. Signed, a true friend of Elias and justice." Oberyn jumped up and seized the box, reaching inside to pull out the bald head that was covered. Oberyn grimaced as he looked at the severed head preserved in salt. "Varys?" he asked, glancing at Doran. "I don't understand it either." "It could be a trap, Oberyn. We don't know the West as well as we should," Doran cautioned. "I don't care, brother. I'm going. Please don't stop me." Oberyn's voice was almost pleading. "I won't, but be careful." "You're the only brother I have," Doran replied, a smile breaking through his concern. Oberyn smiled back. He didn't know how Varys might have been involved in his sister's death or the deaths of her children, and frankly, he didn't care. If Varys was innocent, then he was no loss. If guilty, he had paid the price. The chance to confront that monster and seek vengeance for Elio was too tempting to resist. His brother was right, there was a chance this was a trap, but Oberyn didn't care. He was ready to topple a mountain.